now. We should be going live pretty soon here. We're probably live already.
Okay.
Yeah, we're streaming. So here I am with Nigel Write. My name is Ted Hahs. I'm the Chief of Ethics of Attention Live. He was about, yeah, there we go. Probably live already. There we go. Yeah, we're streaming. All right, turned off the audio on that so we don't get feedback. And
is that from your computer?
Yeah, it's my computer.
Okay, so that works. Yeah, okay. Now I see.
That's just,
okay, I got it.
That has nothing to do with Attention Live. That's just Zoom.
Mm-hmm.
When this conversation going live with Zoom. So Nigel is beta tester of our Attention Live platform, and he's going to beta test it right now. You're going to go live and see if you can go through a desktop and see if you can stream live through Attention Live.
Yes, indeed. I'm logging in right now.
The next piece, he asked me my big three on as the chief of ethics for Attention Live. So we'll answer that.
Okay, I see.
Watching us on YouTube, feel free to comment. Suppose that means I better watch the comment.
Oh, wow. Okay, so that kind of worked. Let's see. This might actually, I'm going to pull you out. Tell me if you can hear me. I'm going to yank out the headset. Can you hear me?
I can hear you, yeah.
Okay, hang on. I'm having the volume for you is a little low. Let me see. Hang on. Having a little trouble hearing you, but let's see what we can do about that. So bear with me here for 1 second. Let's see if we can't jerry-rig this with a Bluetooth speaker. Let's see what we got here.
I'm on and ready to go.
Okay, on and ready to go. Let's see if we can't make that work. Hang on. Can you hear me, Ted?
Yes, sir.
Okay, hold on. Let me get this speaker going here, and then I think we should be in. I'm hoping we'll be in business.
1 moment.
Settings.
1 moment. I'll be right back.
Bluetooth.
1 moment, and I'll be right.
Okay. All right. Just bear with me here for a second. Let's see. Trying to connect.
I'm back.
Yeah, I'm on with you. I'm just trying to see if I can get this Bluetooth speaker to connect so I can hear the volume. Because for some reason, when we're on Zoom,
Well, you heard me say that.
Yeah, because I plugged my headphones back in. It was a little,
oh, okay.
So, yeah, I'm having a little audio weirdness going on here. Hang on. I'm gonna try and see if I can get this thing to pair again.
Ready to go.
Let's see.
I'm ready to pair with your device.
Okay, so let's pair it then. Can you hear me?
I hear you. Barely, but I hear
Can you
you.
hear me?
I hear you barely.
Okay, I guess not.
Have you tried being on Zoom and in a browser, running Attention Live? Let's see.
All right, hold on. I'm going back. 1 second. Coming back. Yeah, that's weird. Super weird. I should be back now.
I hear you.
Yeah, you could hear me, but for some reason, I cannot get the audio to come out of my phone. It's just so bizarre. At least not loudly. I got one more trick up my sleeve. Let's see. I'm gonna go manual. We were talking about this with Bluetooth. Doesn't always work. So one more time. All right, let's try this.
But the reason you need to do that is to catch.
I'm on and ready to go.
Okay.
So you want to catch So you're gonna so try attention live. All right. Can't hear a word you're saying. Nothing.
I should be back now.
I can hear you now.
Yeah, this is weird. For some reason, it'll only work with my headphones.
Okay,
Tried
but if you go attention live through a computer, another device, the only issue is it won't hear me, but it'll hear you, right?
Yeah, it sure will. And I'm hitting start stream right now.
Is it working?
Let's see. Yep, it looks like I got audio. That piece of it is going.
All right. Well,
it is picking up, so I can hear you, and Attention Live can hear me. So I'm on with Ted Hahs, the Chief of Ethics over at Attention Live, and we are streaming. He's got us going on Zoom, going live. So we'll chop this up and put it together, and we'll figure out what's what. So I just asked the burning question that's been on my mind, and maybe some of your minds. What are the top 3 things that the Chief of Ethics seeks to do at Attention Live? What are the big goals? What are the burning questions that keep him up at night to make sure that more is done than just not doing bad things?
Yeah, here we go.
So,
all right. Well, that's not good.
Maybe
That's
I'm
good, right?
Okay,
Okay,
that's
great.
pretty good.
Okay, so now here I'm on my phone. Now let's see if here, let me see if I can actually get off Zoom. Okay, quit Zoom.
Okay.
I'm just going to leave meeting. Okay, sign and leave. All right, I'm still in here. Now let's see if I can go live on Safari on my.
Okay, this should be very interesting. Let's go.
It's not working.
Oh, you're not getting on Safari. Try it. What about Firefox? Try it on Firefox. That was the linchpin. That's where I'm using mine now, and it appears to be working on Firefox pretty good for me.
What about Chrome? Did you try Chrome?
On my phone, I tried all 3, and on 2 different phones, iPhone 6 and an iPhone 8. Neither worked on all 3 browsers, but I am doing it on Firefox on my computer. It seems to be working. Okay. I see the bars moving.
It says I'm working on Chrome right now.
Okay.
So there we go. I should be on YouTube on 2 channels. Now, this might be messing it up because I'm sending 2 streams to the same channel. So we'll see what happens.
I've done worse. I've done Attention Live with a restream going to Twitch and YouTube at the same time on the same machine.
But the issue is I'm actually going to the same YouTube channel, not 2 different channels. So that will probably. We'll see what happens. That'll be interesting to see what happens. You shouldn't do that. So obviously I can't have 2 live streams on the same channel. And I think that Attention Live, since it came second, is going to take over the Zoom one. But okay, very interesting. So ask me the question again.
Okay, so I'm also streaming on my Twitch channel and my other YouTube, not at the same one. But anyway, nothing exceeds except success. So Ted Hahs, the burning question that everybody wants to know, what are the 3 top things that you're looking to achieve as the Chief of Ethics at Attention Live, the questions that keep you up at night, the big 3? What do you say to that?
Okay. First of all, my role as the Chief of Ethics, we kind of we just arrived at that name as a way, kind of as an afterthought. We knew what we were doing,
right?
But we didn't know how to describe it. And we kind of put it out there hesitantly, what does it happen if the pre-founder, one of the first founders, is playing
Right.
this sort of role? And then we did our best to, how do we describe this role, because there was nothing out there. So we first it was director of ethics, and we said, no, this is more important to us than a director. So we
Right.
invented a chief of ethics. I don't know if someone else had invented it first. Okay.
Do you think in hindsight that was the right title?
Oh, well, I'm sure there might be a better one, but what I was going to say, what hit us, we thought we were taking a risk. And then in the events, when we start announcing it, or before we announced it, the first or second question in events about AI and tech in the future is ethics. Everyone's concerned about ethics. So it was actually coming back to us from the market. We had done this as kind of like a step of faith, taking a risk. Like, is anyone going to care? Like, are we going to get pushback? We were ready for the pushback.
Right.
We were preparing for pushback. And instead of getting pushback, we got resonance of people because they were so concerned about ethics. Okay. So our philosophy of ethics is, it's not good enough to just not be evil.
Right.
So, like, I mean, I work very, very closely with Ian and with the other founders, and it's like, yeah, like, we're not going to do anything evil, but that's not our standard. Our standard is we need to be very, very intentional about doing right things, doing righteous things. So I believe we're at a unique period in humanity. We're in the most transformative time of humanity ever.
Okay.
That's just a fact. I want it to be transformative for good, and I want us to solve the right problems. Like someone said, this is a similar statement that I think applies. Okay, this is what keeps me up at night. My question is not, or my prayer for you is not whether you'll succeed or not. My greatest fear for you is that you will succeed at the wrong thing. It's like, I'm not afraid that we're going to get up the ladder, but I don't want to get to the top of the ladder and realize it's leaning against the wrong hill or the wrong building.
Right.
And my biggest, so unintended consequences. Like I and I think many, many others were deeply frustrated, disappointed. Probably actually most people, at least for me, were beyond disappointment because we had already become cynical, but grieved by the Senate hearings with all of the tech giants. And particularly Zuckerberg, when like one of the things he said was, what's good for the people might not be good for Facebook. Like, whoa, why do you exist? But to me, I look back and I see somebody who actually wanted to do good. Someone who is reacting against Microsoft and Bill Gates, who, like, I like Bill Gates. I think he's doing really good. But like when he first started out on his philanthropy journey, everyone's like, bro, you spent your whole career being evil. Now you're trying to make up for it. Like someone said, you're trying to give back. Well, maybe if you hadn't taken so much in the first place, you wouldn't need to give back. You took too much. And that was kind of that mindset where Microsoft went in, and it was their whole mentality was very much, we're pirates and we're going to beat you and we're big. And then Zuckerberg and that next generation were reacting against that and say, I want to do good. And his whole manifesto for Facebook of bringing the world together. And now we look, and I think this consensus is very clear that he not only didn't bring the world together, he actually made it more divided, or highlighted the divisions and figured out how to make a whole lot of money off of division, tribalism, and fake news and ideological. And I think that was an unintended consequence.
Yeah.
I don't think it was because he didn't have the right ideals. I think it's because, well, ultimately, I think it was because it was an example for us to do better.
How do you think this happens often? Because I often wonder about this
Over
particular
and
thing.
over. I think this happens over and over and over again, and I'm continually fascinated by it. It's like,
That
how is it?
people walk into something with one mindset. It's not their intent, but they end up getting to that same spot.
Did you ever see the movie Lawrence of Arabia?
Mhm.
Okay. Remember Lawrence of Arabia? There's this interview with one of the sheiks that he partnered with, who was his good friend, and he said, and they were talking about mercy and all that, and he said, for Lawrence, mercy is a passion. For us, it's just good manners. You decide which motivation is more trustworthy. And then the whole point was, he was passionate about mercy until he got captured and got tortured and pushed to his limits, and realized if they had known who he was, he would have told them everything. And then he went and flipped and became very brutal.
Right.
I see that over and over again, like in my ministry work, and you're as a pastor, and as a pastor, you wear a lot of hats, and in counseling people, and this is known, it's hurting people who hurt people. It's the victimizer was a victim. The many times the perpetrators of child abuse were abused themselves. And I see we continue these patterns, and we come in with these great ideals. I tell a young man who's wanting to get married, and trying to help him deal with his father issues, and you're wounded, and you get to this point, and you shake your fist and say, I'm never going to be like the old man. I'm like, whoa. You better, that's a vow. And that's what what's going to happen. You're going to be just like him, because you're either it ties you to him. I see this pattern over and over. The proper response is, but by God's grace, there go I, Lord Jesus, deliver me. Or so there's this putting yourself in this place of humility to say, I'm not better than him. And I think, the unintended consequences happen over and over. So my number one thing, probably one of them, unintended consequences. Number two is, how do we deal with success? It's easier to get the kid out of the ghetto than it is to get the ghetto out of the kid.
Okay.
And there's nothing like adversity. Adversity is a great advantage. It's tough in a lot of ways. That's why it's got its name, adversity. It's adverse, but
Right.
It sure protects you against a whole bunch of things.
Yeah. At one point, I used to feel like I was driven by adversity. Like it's like, tell me I can't do something. And I've come to realize that that's really not that was an unintended consequence. So I totally get that. And to your other point, I think by the grace of God, I think when we are our most vulnerable, when we believe we're bulletproof, like it can't happen. And it's stunning to me how many people think things can't happen. Stunning.
Yeah, like in marriage, if you go into a marriage and divorce, that'll never happen to me.
Mm.
You're going to get blindsided and hit really hard. And a much wiser approach is to go in and say, no, my marriage is very fragile. But by the grace of God, that could happen to me. No, but we'll make sure every day that we get up, we're great, we're thankful for the opportunity, and we insure against those things.
Right.
Now, having said that, it's also bad to go in with the expectation of saying, oh, that's how it's going to end out. I can never do any better. I mean, both are bad.
The foregone conclusion mentality.
Yeah. The proper mentality is to go in there and say that could happen, but we're going to make sure it doesn't. We're going to act upon it. So
easy to take the kid out of the ghetto, hard to take the ghetto out of the kid. What's the answer? Or what's the approach rather than the answer?
I think the approach, humility, transparency, and relationships. I mean, I need to be humble enough. Well, I keep getting the picture of Ulysses in the legend, and he wanted to listen to the sirens.
Yeah.
His men tie him to the mast and plug their ears. He says, "I want to hear, but and no matter what I say, don't change it. Don't change it." He was tied to the mast. So then, of course, when he's hearing him, he's doing everything he can to get them to change. But he was tied to the mast, and he couldn't do it. See, I think it's not enough, to be humble and self-aware and all that. You have to go a step further and realize that relationships are critical. And tie yourself to the mast in the sense of putting things in place that are beyond your control.
Yeah. And the right relationships as well.
That will hold you accountable. Yes. Do you empower other people? Not just do they have the trust is one thing, but do you trust them so much that you'll give them the keys to the car? You know what I'm saying? So when you're weak and in that moment, you're trying to get the keys from them rather than trying to get the keys from you. You know what I'm saying?
And that's a tough one, because the one thing I've learned over time, and I think time is the only thing that can kind of prove this out. Sometimes what we believe is trust and value and all these things that we hold dear over time prove out to be nothing but nostalgia. And that at times comes to be painful.
You're saying a whole lot in that. Yeah.
Yeah. Because
part of my own, but I think, we go through this, we have these ideals, and then like Ian says, life kicks you in the balls really hard.
Well, yeah. And then to your point, it's sustainability, all of it. When you think about it, like great relationships are about sustainability. It's not about perfection. It's about who's going to be there repeatedly, who's going to, steer the course. May not be perfect, maybe a winding road, maybe some bumps and bruises and potholes, whatever the case may be. But who's going to steer the course? Who's going to be there when, with a friend in need is a friend in need is a friend indeed kind of, scenario over time and that is just, it just becomes a big part of it. So, I get it. Tie yourself to the mat. So you got those two. You got
but you got to find the people that are trustworthy, because you'll get screwed over and over if you trust too much, and it's on both sides. It's tough.
Yeah. It's I always wonder about what it would be like. I'm a glass always full guy. So I just I am like, and I literally keep people around me that keep me out of delusion. Some of them are a lot more like, I ain't doing that, like kind of thing, but just keep me just shy of delusion. That to me is the ideal place, because I feel like the moment I lose faith in humanity and the good in people, game over for me. I feel like it's game over. I have to be able to see the good in people, and I genuinely,
do together. Can we, I'm actually can we be hopeful and also realistic? And to me, that's the whole. I mean, for me, we just celebrated that because if that's what Jesus exemplified when he went to the cross, and I'm having to learn is my hope in people or can I hope in people realizing they're broken and they're going to disappoint me, because we're going to get beyond that disappointment together. And that's because it's not just the two of us in it. There's a power bigger than me who's faced death and overcome it.
Right. But it's also I think there's so much in that we could hear the same thing over and over for years. I know I did for decades. Didn't make sense until, sometimes it's just this pivotal moment. Like I started to think about forgiveness a few years back, having gone through a pretty traumatic experience. And it was at that point, and growing up, going to Catholic school, the whole 9 yards, like I was, that whole thing. Thinking about the sacrifice of, Christ on the cross, that kind of thing, giving your only begotten son, and just thinking about what that really, really means, beyond the brutality and everything like that. Like, could I really be that person to give my only son to go through that? Like, what kind of
I'll
belief?
Tell you
what kind of, and even more to this point, like when I was growing up, I was a staunch believer in the death penalty. Like that was it. As much as I went to Catholic school, that was it. And literally one Sunday changed my mind. One Sunday, one sermon, one message, and it was about a movie. It was, the priest came in and he said, like, how's everybody doing? He gave gospel, and he was like, he's like, I saw this movie, Dead Man Walking. And he said, and all through the movie, Sean Penn's going on, and, he's saying he didn't do it. They're trying to frame him, blah, blah, blah. And he's getting ready to, face the death penalty. Just before he's about to face it, he finally gives in and says, I did it. I'm sorry. I repent. And he's like, he talked about how God thinks about that. And the fact that he asked for forgiveness, he would have gotten forgiveness and his soul would be saved. He said, now think about it. He said, I'm not saying that if someone goes out and murders somebody, you're going to give them a wet, sloppy kiss. I'm not saying that they shouldn't, be put in prison. But to take someone's life and take away their opportunity to repent, to save their soul. And at that moment, it became like, it was like someone said to me, Nigel, you understand you're not God, right? You get that? Is that sinking in? And I backed so far away from that thing that I couldn't even believe I ever thought that way, because no matter how upset you could be about something, to take away the ability for someone to save their soul, it was just profound. So like over the time, you see these things and the answers are right there. If you think about it, it's right there. We hear it over and over, but sometimes it just doesn't sink in. And when it does, it's like, wow, the unlock is real. So there's a lot in that. There's a lot in that.
So you asked me for top 3. This is great.
Yeah.
I articulated them, but in my mind, I've given you 2.
Yep, you gave me 2 big ones.
The third one. What is the third one? I think transparency is super important, but probably my big, and which is key. Okay, my biggest one. I believe we're at a unique time of history. I believe not only is the technology expanding, there's also things like every field is expanding exponentially. And it carries its own issues. But I also think I believe God is active in history.
Okay.
And I believe he's doing this with all for a purpose. And I believe we can solve problems that have never been solved before. And we can create an abundance for humanity like never before. I believe that not just can we, but okay, so for me, where I'm coming from personally,
right?
If this whole, I'm an optimist. I'm the cup is, half full. We can fill it, and we can build it bigger, and let's start a brewery. That's me.
I love it.
Come on, man, we got to fill it together, and it's got to turn into wine. You know, that's me.
Keep
I'm
the party going.
Okay, that's what keeps me going. Okay.
Okay.
If this is all about me, you know, like I feel like there's part of us there's this mantra out there that, like, you know, I want to be my better self. I want to be my ideal self, you know. So like in my fight with destiny is, am I going to get to the end? And is it going to be like, did I give my best to the world, or, you know, did I waste what was given me or not use it completely? And I think, wait, if it's about me, I don't know if I'm going to really be able to make that big of a difference. Like, you know, like, does the world need the ideal version of Ted? Or like, you know, they're not seeing the ideal version yet. And the ideal version is a whole much better than this. But is that, you know, even the ideal version of Ted, it's not all about me. You know, it's like, I have to understand, was this transformation and changing the world and this drive I have inside of me, is this me, or is it someone stronger than me? Like when you were saying, could I give my son in sacrifice? And before, I probably wouldn't have had such a clear understanding. I probably would have given the right one, but not the right answer. But now it's so clear to me that God's not asking me to give my son. And he's not asking me to do what Jesus did, because there was only one person who could do what Jesus did. He never asked Peter to do what Jesus did, even though Peter ended up being crucified head down. So in some ways, that was even worse. But it was entirely different, because Peter had Jesus with him, holding his hand through it all. Peter could never do what Jesus did. When Jesus was doing it, Peter was doing the opposite and denying him and running away as a coward.
Right.
And I had this revelation, I can't do what only Jesus could do. And God's not asking me to do that. He's only asking me to do what he's telling me to do. And it's coming to this place of rest and peace. But along with that is shifting my understanding that it's not about me becoming the best Ted I can be. It's like I have this picture that somebody signed LeBron James. As soon as you sign LeBron James, you're a contender. Now you build it around him. I'm getting recruited to play on the team that LeBron James plays on. So now my role, I don't have to carry the whole team. I only have to play my role at the best I can play. And I just have this picture I believe that throughout all of human history, there's been a force bigger than me who has very intentionally been leading us to this place. I believe that force is the Father of Jesus Christ, and he sent Jesus Christ. And that Jesus did something that was a unique one-time event that never can be repeated and never has to be repeated, and was a total game changer. And I believe that Jesus not only died, but he rose from the dead. Now, to me, the burden is not to convince other people of that, but to actually convince myself of that and walk it out so that it's demonstrated. But for me, it's understanding that if that's the case, I'm being recruited and I only have to play my role. And my role is not the starring role. His role is the starring role. My role is to be in the right place and to do what I can. And whether that's 5 minutes or, you know, whatever minutes, like, and even as a player, I love this because, you know, it's like one of my favorite players is Dennis Rodman.
Oh, yeah. You don't get me started. The hardest working man ever.
And the contentment, the other guy I like is Magic Johnson. Magic Johnson would literally, like, he scored 40 points or scored 3 points. You could not tell by his demeanor. He did not care. He didn't even know. He only cared if his team won. And this was where they're all counting their stats, like counting their assists. Like back then, assists was still like, you didn't score it. Like he was kind of the turning point for that. Like he literally did not care. he was such a team player. I also saw that in Dennis Rodman.
Dennis Rodman really, to me was just always, I used to say, I'm like, man, this guy's going after rebounds like he's working on commission. I loved it. Like it just made like the passion, like like growing up being a Knicks fan, was still a Knicks fan, you know, like it was just seeing those, because the Knicks has always been a solid B+ team in my mind. Like they've been there. That's their yeah, that's it. They're never really quite with the, you know. Yeah, but they'd make it exciting. They'd make it fun. There'd always be these magical moments that, you know, you could only get. And like any other team, I don't care how big a superstar, you come to the Garden, you know what it is. You know, I remember literally as recent as a few years ago, I was at the draft. My godson he was working for the Nets at the time. He's like, hey, you know, I got these tickets to go see the draft, you know, in Madison Square Garden when they're going to do it. So they draft Porzingis. And I'm booing. I'm like, come on. This dude? And dude turns out to be great, but that's New Yorkers for you. That's how you got to earn it. I remember the whole Linsanity craze, which was like another one, which I thought was like, it's just those moments that make you see it. And when I see a Dennis Rodman and the way he was just like, look, I'm risking life and limb. I'm putting in the work. It's, you know, hard work beats talent when talent's not working hard. He was putting in the work. He was showing his value. And it never gets old.
Yeah. And what I liked about him, and I could go other players, but, you know, just like his complete, what I call, I mean, I'm not saying in the rest of life, but in basketball on the court, he was completely humble. I mean, obviously he's extremely confident, but he has no problem. Like when he says stuff like, you know, like he want to do layups. And while they're doing layups and shooting around, he'd sit on the side and they go, why aren't you shooting? He said, what the heck? Why do I need to shoot for? I ain't going to be shooting.
Get rebounds. Am I here?
Yeah, and he'd be sitting there and he'd be studying where the ball bounced when Michael shot it.
Yep.
But it's like this total contentment that he doesn't care if he scores. But then when he needs to, he's hitting these threes. That was what's hilarious, you know.
But that's how it happens, you know.
This total, like he was another guy that, like, he was the first of his time. So now, you know, like to me, it's easier for Draymond Green, like, you know, Draymond Green. But Rodman was at the time where there was no glory in it. He kind of shifted that to me. But it's
Birdman got a little bit more, got a little of it.
Yeah. And to me, it's that, but Birdman never ascended. Birdman was fun. I love the Birdman.
Yeah.
I mean, I love that story. I mean, that just cracked. I just break down in here. That's like of his whole story. I love that.
Yeah,
that's like basketball's for. That's just so incredible, that redemption. Mm-hmm. Like, I loved him. But the level, you know, that Rodman took it to, of just this excellence and this complete surrender to be willing to play whatever role and not having to get the accolades, only caring about the end result, you know?
Right.
That's, so I suppose my last big three is, I don't want us to miss this opportunity. I don't want to climb up this ladder, you know, and we leaned it up against the wrong, or I hope that if we do find that we climbed up the end of this ladder and leaned it up against the wrong building, hopefully we won't do that, but we'd have the humility to go down and to fix it.
Right.
So, of course, that's a lot harder than to just make sure it's not on the wrong building.
I'm personally not a fan of rework. That's why I just do the work that's necessary. I'd rather, you know, we never have time to do it right, but always have time to do it over.
but I believe that technology, like, okay, when I hear, like, when I'm on these Clubhouse meetings, I keep thinking of, wait, I don't think Clubhouse is here to solve these problems we're talking about. I believe Clubhouse, and I'm speaking in all of these innovations, are here to solve the problems we're not talking about. Like, I'm carrying and I'm thinking, What about the African Americans in East Oakland? What about the Native Americans on the reservation? What about the single moms that they're not on Clubhouse because they ain't got a phone? And not, you know, I'm inspired by those stories where you hear these persons that have come out, but do we really understand? Are we seeing it for what it is? Because for each one that's come out, the system is still generating the others.
Well, and I think that's a great point, and I feel like the miss, if I'm reading you correctly, if I'm tracking, it's not acknowledging the in spite of. Like sometimes I hear, and this one kind of bothers me. I think like you said, for everyone that ascends, there are many who don't get the opportunity, who many that still don't have it. And I think that it's great to have empathy and talk about it and talk about your struggle and what have you. But I still feel like there's just so much, like you said, opportunity, and in everything, you know, like.
I think the way we're talking about it is a step in the right direction. Like before, we just did it and didn't even care, and now our ethos has changed. We're talking about it, but I want to see greater humility, a greater understanding of grace, and realize that if I made it, yes, I worked hard. Even if I wasn't given any opportunities, whatever you have that got you out of it was given to you by grace. Like I used to in basketball, I used to think, because I'd play against these guys that were like, I'm tall, so I'm 6'9", so that's a natural. But I was gangly, I was slow, but I love to work hard. I worked really, really hard, and I was smart. I could learn stuff quickly. But I would play against players who were, but I couldn't jump that well. I mean, I had white man's disease, you know. I wasn't athletic. So I'd always be playing against guys that were more athletic than me. And often I'd play with them 1 year, and then a year later, I would play with them again, and they weren't even in. I'd pass them up because I worked so hard.
Right.
I used to have this chip on my shoulder. It's like, man, if I had that talent, I would work hard. You know, I would go if I could jump like that, blah, 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 you know. And then suddenly, because I was the hard worker. I worked way harder than you. I was in the gym before you. I left after you.
Right.
Like, I worked so hard. But suddenly someone had to speak to me and said, you know, Ted, that gift to work hard, that's also a gift. That was revolution, because then I said, oh, wait, I can work hard. I have this energy to work hard. I have the stable mentality. And then I just, you know, the things that are the most valuable, you don't even understand because that's your normal. And then, you know, like I remember this one young kid who extremely talented. He was like my height. He ended, well, a little bit shorter, just naturally strong and could jump out of the gym. And I could dog him because I had the skill better than that. And I'd be frustrated because I could never get him to work hard. And I knew him when he was young and when I could physically dominate him. And then when I could no longer physically dominate him, I had to play it with skill. Like he was so far beyond me. And in the past, I would have been frustrated. But suddenly in this time, I was just filled with such deep compassion because I had kind of wanted that gift of athleticism that I never had. I mean, I didn't have that gift of athleticism the way he did. But then I realized, wow, this kid never had a father. That's why he's not playing in the NBA and why he's not even playing in college. Instead, he's trying to stay out of prison. And then it was just this revelation that it's all by grace.
Right.
And what I want to see us have, what I want to, in everyone, is to really understand that there's more things in heaven and earth than you've dreamt of. The world's a whole lot bigger than you. And even after you've overcome all these things and in tremendous adversity, even that is still a gift by grace. And we need to keep giving back. Like to me, again, I look at the example of Jesus. He didn't do everything. He didn't like finish it. He kept going until it was done, beyond what he was able to, beyond his own strength, until it was finished. And I feel like we need a deeper revelation of grace, and to realize that even when we've succeeded, that's just the launching pad.
Yeah.
That's so ultimately it's, am I going to be faithful with what's been entrusted to me?
I get it. I get it. This is good. This is good. It's, I can't say I expected anything, but I wouldn't have expected less. However, this was just kind of puts a finer point on it, and I'm thrilled to hear it.
Here's an idea I want to throw out at you.
Sure.
What about, where would, I mean, I don't, to be honest, I don't, what if we had like tech and ethics room on?
Yes.
On Clubhouse?
Yes.
Things like this once a week or more often.
Yes.
Tech and ethics, or the future of whatever.
Yes, and yes, and yes.
Okay, let me articulate it very clear and help me with the words, because I understand the concepts. I don't know. I believe that the destiny of tech is to eliminate poverty, systemic poverty, change the system. I believe that we can envision a California where there's no homelessness.
Okay, so I will say
technology is growing in such a that it's not, can we solve it or not? No, finally we can. And I just took that out as the one of the really big problems that's beyond anybody, that we're not, that we can go from that we can envision a California where there's an entirely different criminal justice system, where rather than 80% recidivism, there's no recidivism. Where instead of figuring out how we're going to house all these prisoners, we are trying to figure out what we're going to do with things that used to be called prisons. Now they're not needed. They're being offlined. Okay, we're going to turn them into beautiful resorts to,
Well, I think this opens up a lot for me, because lately, and this has been coming for a while, like for me, it's all those things are things that I find super important. For me, the big push would be the super low-hanging fruit to get the momentum started. Like one of the things that I've been super passionate about is frankly frustrated about. I kind of said it in a room the other day. Someone asked about whether or not how's voice working for the elderly or senior citizens, and my answer was like, it's not, and there's no reason why it shouldn't be working. We have enormous low-hanging fruit opportunity. There's just that we're just not doing. And the thing is, for me, I think it's like the elephant one bite at a time kind of philosophy. I think the homelessness and the education and the prison reform and all those things, those are eminently solvable if we build the momentum to solve. Because I think everything is about sustainability.
One step at a plus we need to have a longer conversation. I need to tell you what we're doing right now. Like right now we are working. Well, I'll tell you this very quick. One of the organizations I'm partnering with, and I believe in collaboration. So get more on board, the better, especially Christian. I mean, Jesus dying speech was, hey, have them collaborate. Lord, would they work together? We should really be into it.
It's not that hard. It's not that hard. We're so not that different.
Okay. We're building tiny home villages, and we believe in housing first and work first. So we're targeting the homeless, but we want to reframe the idea to not think of the homeless as the problem, but realize the homeless are the greatest asset, are people, and people are the greatest asset a community has. So really, homeless are just unmined gold. So yeah, there might be dirt around it, but imagine you saw gold nuggets inside a muddy stream. No one's going to be talking about the mud. Everyone's going to be talking about the gold. So the project we're working on right now is we have training programs where we train the inmates to build tiny homes inside the prison. It's in a prison in California, our pilot program, but we want to scale. We're in the process of scaling it out.
Right.
So we build it very low cost, and they get training, which is under high demand. So this is the number one factor. If you have real job skills, rather than $200 and a bus ticket to the ghetto,
Right.
out with no possibility of making any real income, that's the big factor. Okay, so they get training. Now we drive the price, and we're able to make it much more affordable. And then we build villages and house the homeless. And now we want to put jobs on those. And then we have another program. We have the first program, which is the first ever Cisco Academy inside a prison. So now the inmates go through this process, 12 weeks, then they get certified at their first level. The same time they graduate and they're released into society. So now they're trained in Cisco, and we're looking at merging those together so that we build tiny home villages, the housing of the future. And with on-site in this village, there's work, there's the jobs of the future that are created, and not just addressing homelessness. That's horrible. That's epidemic. I mean, if you don't understand the historical nature of where we live, I mean, these tent villages are just, we need to rise up and say, no, we're not going to accept that as a society. But it's not just alleviating the symptom. It's envisioning that in the future, this is what a community looks like. We believe in a community where abundance is accessible to everyone.
I love the idea. I love what you just explained is, and I know we're saying this, like, it's the sustainability piece of it, because it's not a question of whether or not it's doable. It's just a matter of putting the right infrastructure in place and having enough moxie and courage, to kind of keep driving it forward, and then tweaking along the way and saying, okay, this is going to turn into this, and this is like what I like to call the solar panel method in my world. Like, it's just got to keep renewing itself. Because if you once that happens, it's not necessarily passive, because I think you always have to be an active participant, but it will sustain. It won't be something where you're just going to just keep pouring in and keep pouring in and keep pouring in, and nothing's gonna. I always look at it as like you're pushing, a boulder up a mountain to get it to the top. Now, just before it hits the top, it's probably going to be the heaviest thing. You'd be like, oh my God. But once it gets there, you can knock it over with a feather. And once it starts rolling, that's where it is. So but I would love to be a part of that. Both components of that are things that I'm super passionate about, that I feel like I'm genuinely coming to grips with in terms of how I want to use my, what I know about technology and what I see as the future, to leave the world in a better place than I found it, to actually create some actually sustainable good that I could be proud of, that will make a difference. So, yeah.
Great.
So,
that's what, like a lot, when I hear talk about ethics, most people are, they're futurists, so they're projecting forward with the technology, and their ethical thoughts are, how do we address those issues that are going to come up?
Yeah. Well, you see, yeah.
And I think the solution to, and there's very tricky ones, like we were talking about today, the proliferation of data, and they're going to know everything. Now it's really scary. I mean, you think it's scary now. Voice is going to know your health, like, better than anybody else. Like, that's one of the huge potentials. Like, voice algorithms will be able to analyze and know way before the current tests, by analyzation of the voice, of whether you're susceptible to having a stroke. And for elderly, like, you could have a lot more notice. Like, it can notify you, and you still have time to fly out from
Right.
to California to be with your elderly person before the stroke happens and to intervene. Like, that's beautiful. But the knowledge that that's going to give us, and what we've learned over and over, is unless we're very intentional about it, it's going to default to a very lower common denominator of profitability, short-term profitability.
Well, I think we're already short selling the advantages that the technology has in general. I think there's ways that we can make meaningful strides immediately with things that are easily available that we're just simply not doing because either we're thinking too big initially when we're not addressing the pieces at the bottom, or for the wrong purposes. Because I think the human conversations are what is going to drive the automation, in my view. It's always a hybrid to me. It's never.
And that's and the answer, I believe, is we need to right now, beginning a long time ago, but let's start right now, taking the technology and being very intentional to use it to solve problems that exist right now. Like, we have to realize, like, the whole idea of AI taking over, like, do you realize that it already has? And what it does,
because we're not doing anything.
Get you to engage in a screen, so you hurt your neck, so you did this, so you, because that's what monetizes Facebook, Google. Well, you know, the irony of it is, you watch that. you watch the Social Dilemma.
Oh my goodness! Don't even get like.
Wait, they're not. Netflix is making money off of manipulating me in watching a movie, which is telling me how they manipulate me, and they pick on everybody but themselves. But they kind of almost invented this algorithm.
That movie was just fed. Like, and you know what? Like, the thing that's been hitting me home is with seniors. That's my huge passion.
Do you have?
I do. My mom's 85 and my he's 80. And wow. I just find that there's so much value in what could be done with voice that we're not tackling. I'm hearing, oh yeah, we could figure out if you're sick, and we can figure out, listen, I don't know about you, but I don't know how many prescriptions you've gotten in your life, but I've never once read one of those stupid pamphlets they give you with your drugs. Never. Like, absolutely never. They could say, don't eat this with peanut butter and you will drop dead in 5 minutes. I would never know because I never read it. It is ridiculous to me that we're killing trees for something that most people don't read. And for elderly people, you could put that in a skill. Save the paper, save the pharmacist the trouble. But what are we doing?
But not only that, like that, let's do that. But can you imagine, like, the resource they are? Like, okay, let's gather their knowledge. Like,
ask the questions. Because they'll tell you.
And let's document it right now. But then let's create algorithms that curate that build this body of knowledge. Like one of my close mentors who passed away in 2015 was Chief Jay Swallows, a Native American. He was born in a teepee. He grew up speaking his native language natively. Mm-hmm. He was a historian of their tribe, of an oral culture. So they would sit down around the tribe with the talking stick and down and tell their stories. And that's how he remembered all their stories, because they're an oral society. The guy was brilliant. He ended up getting an honorary doctorate, which is such a joke because he worked far harder than anybody who's got a real doctorate. It was because... But but what a wealth of knowledge. Now he's gone, and his generation is one of the last of those who were native speakers. Let's right now start recording that. Like, let's get voices to them to save those languages. Let's make it, let's do the exact opposite of the iniquity we did of taking their children into boarding schools, right, and forbidding them to speak. Right. Just say, oh, let's pay you to speak because we want to preserve this language and this way of thinking. Like, the whole culture, because you talk to him and his perspective would be so different. And it's like, oh, you can learn so much.
Well, and that's the thing. I think it's clicking for you, like it's clicking for me, and I'm seeing it more and more every day. Like with my mom, she had like a memory issue, and I speak to my mom almost every night. And just for that brief moment, I was like, wow, if that was it, and then you send my mom home with 4 pages of, to me, nonsensical information. I'm like, my mom's not going to read this. It's giving me a headache reading it, and I consider myself somewhat intelligent, but this is
No one's going to
annoying.
read that fine print. Plus,
I'm like, this is annoying. So
plus,
I'm like, I want something that's valuable. So if I could tell my mom, who's 85, wouldn't it be great that Alexa just reminds you to take your medicine, tells you what it is, don't take it with this, whatever the case may be? She was like, that would be wonderful. I'm like, good. Well, I'm going to work on building that, because it is frustrating to me.
That's one of the things I'm super excited about.
Yeah. So I definitely want to do this room. I definitely want to be, I want to be on the forefront of getting that information from the human resources that are there asking those questions, the tough questions, or just the question. Because instead of assuming, like it's interesting to me that you in a lot of these rooms, and I think it's this, I think it's that. You think, I think, we think, whatever the case may be. Who have you asked? No one. I've asked no one. Or it's 9 out of 10 dentists surveyed. Well, how many dentists did you actually survey to get those 9 out of 10?
No, as a matter.
I mean, it's like
the first book we read in my stats class was How to Lie with Statistics. 9 out of 10 dentists surveyed. That's
I'm like, again, I am more the radically pragmatic. Like, tell me what is this going to work? Is this actually, helping? If this is silly, like, to me, killing trees for stuff we don't read, that makes no sense. We need to fix this like now. Like, there's no ifs, ands, buts, or maybes. Let's fix it now. Let's get some data down on what it is. We have people where obviously the prisons are actually doing a great job of utilizing the human resources in there for their own capitalistic needs, but not for rehabilitation.
Oh,
it's a great labor resource from the way they're monetizing it.
Oh, it's criminal. It's criminal. All that we spend in the money that the percentage that's actually spent on true job rehabilitation, it's like horrible.
Yeah.
And then, what happened during COVID? Like, hopefully, I think. See, we got to tell these stories, and we've got to care, and we've got to put pressure on it, because I think we have an opportunity like never before. Like, okay, what's happening right now? We think we're coming out of COVID, but there's a called the poverty pandemic that's a tsunami compared to a large wave.
Yeah,
Hey, I've got to run now.
Yep.
Okay.
This was great. Let me know what times are good for you.
Works great. I can't start this week. Tomorrow's my wife's birthday.
Gotcha.
And so it'll be sometime after the 13th. But I'm going to rearrange my schedule around what's the ideal time. So let's start doing it. So yeah. I go visit my brother the 11th through the 13th.
Okay.
So yeah. After that week, the second part of that week, what's the best day? What's the best time?
Well, let's say that when like right where before you come back, let's check back in, because like I said, we can adjust until we find it. I don't mind doing it as long as you're okay with it. I don't mind doing it impromptu as long as we do it consistently when you have time, or when we find a time. It would be nice to find a perfect time.
Let's start with our world, which you and me first of all, but then maybe run it by Terry and Ian and our friends. Like, do this. What time works for you? And then and I think I'll commit to the time. And we start. Okay, let's continue this on text. Let's look at what our best time is, and when we can commit to it, and then let's start doing it.
I love it. Listen, this was fantastic. I appreciate you taking the time.
Yep. Ethics in Tech.
Ethics in Tech. Let's get it. Eat.
All right. Well, that's the plan, folks. Thank you for joining us on this stream. It's been amazing. It's been on Attention Live. And if you're watching this and seeing any video, that means we figured out the recording on Zoom. Thank you for joining us, and join us in the future. Subscribe to whatever channels you're listening to this on. And
yes, indeed.
Attention.live and sign up to be a beta user. And if you're an investor, give us a ping and invest in Attention Live. It's a unique opportunity.
There you go. And remember, this is where Ethics in Tech was born. EAT. There you go. There's an acronym for you. I love a good acronym. EAT. Let's do it. Take care, man.
All right.